So.
Put on my Irish accent.
Sorry.
And then I guess I've got, what have I got? Oh, I said I would mention Bletchley Park. Apparently Bletchley Park desperately needed funding, and I've not spoken to them since before Christmas, so I don't know what the situation is. But I figured this was a group of people, we should care about Bletchley.
Because BCO is a big funding body, obviously.
It's a big funding body, but there's a lot of writers around, and writers are very good at telling people they ought to give money to them. Particularly to writers.
We've actually Park not be in a position to actually get a lot of information. We can actually pay it for it.
I don't think they function anymore, do they? I think that. I went there, and it's mostly still Colossus. And
so they would have you leave.
So they would have you leave, but underneath. Yeah, I got very excited about Bletchley when I went there.
Old computers are fascinating.
Yeah.
They are the National Museum of Digital Computing. In other words, it's a room full of
with things with valves and vacuum.
But even it's the things that Spectrums and ZX81s and all of these sort of early computers that people first off. So if you're in the area, it's worth it.
And one of those things is probably that, I can't remember what it was, some terrifying statistic, but the computer in the Apollo capsule was kind of pocket calculator level thing. Somebody at the back.
What is Bletchley Park?
Oh, it's where the Enigma code was cracked, and all the Nissen huts with people working, and it got terribly hot, so it's all a bit racy. They're all kind of working in sort of canistovs because it was so warm. It's very funny. They'd stopped talking about that. When I first saw some stuff about Bletchley Park when I was a kid, there was a lady who'd worked at Bletchley, and she was one of the very few people who would talk about it. And it was very funny. There was a black and white photograph of her in what looked actually very modest, and she said, "You have to understand, it was frightfully scandalous."
Yes.
Because we were semi-clad. Because it was so hot because of all the machinery and so on. So the men weren't allowed in at all. We sort of passed things out through the windows. But it was like sort of Victorian dirty postcard, everything completely covered up. But she was smiling, which is obviously smiling. But it was absolutely, and I went up to Bletchley, and it's very, very sort of, you have this feeling that in Central Europe or in America, it would be this kind of incredible monument. It'd be really well organised, and it'd be, the whole house would be sort of domed in geodesic glass, and it'll never change. And you'd walk through, and there'd be sort of people saying, this is the equation, this is how it works, and you'd come out, even if you're terrible at maths, understanding it. You go, and they've got people who really are the kinds of people who would have been working there. And they from my point of view, they try to explain it to me, and I'm lost. It's such a fantastic place, and it has such incredible potential, but at the moment it's just very, very English. And actually what it needs is the Duchess of Devonshire. I saw her at the Hay Festival a couple of years ago, and she'd taken on the whole sort of Devonshire estates are massive, and she'd turned them around and made them profitable and opened up to the public and so on. And someone said to her, so how did you feel that you were going to take on this impossible job? This was really, when you took it on, it was a mess. How did you know you were going to be able to? Because you've never done anything like this before. And she said, well, darling, someone had to. And that was just it. And, as far as she was concerned, you do the job in front of you. And I think that's actually, incidentally, a really good thing in the context of charity. I think you do the jobs in front of you, which is why. So for me, it's Reprieve, and I mentioned Bletchley Park because they asked me to. Heidi, Greg came along and said, will you do this? And the only other thing that I'm sort of involved in is this terrifying thing called Deborah, which is for a skin condition called EB, which is just awful.
But that's the butterfly thing, isn't it, with the children?
They're born with very, very fragile skin. And they don't survive. Yeah, exactly. And it's awful. But and that's just completely bizarre. Deborah holds a fundraiser, an annual fundraiser, and it's extraordinarily odd. It's magnificent, but very strange. For some reason, they have a charity boxing match hosted by the fully clothed girls from Spearmint Rhino. And this is how they raise money for Deborah. And they raise lots, which they need to because it's expensive stuff. But it's very strange as an occasion. You wouldn't really necessarily. And the whole thing is that I think the chairman is Michael Portillo. So it's a really unlikely mixture. And when you go along, the charities produce these incredibly odd alliances which are really worth kind of seeing. And some amazing and extraordinary people. I used to know, she's dead now, I used to know an extraordinary woman who worked in charity. There's a story told of that. I mean, it's just quickly, I'm worried that I'm going to say something inappropriate. I'll just strip all the kind of nationalities and names out. But she was working in the developing world, trying to facilitate an adoption in the UK of some kids from an orphanage there. And everything was being paid, everybody was being paid off. It was how it was working. And finally, the woman who was sort of pivotal announced that although she'd been paid once, she actually needed to be paid again. And my friend went and saw her. She's a French lady, very beautiful, of a certain age. She said, "Hello!" And this lady said, "Hello." "I am Yvette. And you have been paid, and now you will not do what you have been paid to do." She said, "No, I won't. I won't." She said, "Well, am I beautiful?" And she said, "Yes, you are." "Do you think I am attractive?" "Yes, yes, I do." "If you do not do what you have been told to do, I will sleep with your husband every night." Oh yeah. You did not want to mess with that lady, and she would have done it too. Absolutely without fail. On the doorstep. Hello! So, yeah, fully bench.
This is doing the job that's in front of you.
Don't worry. That was a lady. She died in a cast match in Central Europe. She was working in I can't remember one of the difficult and dangerous bits of Europe. And she just went off the edge of a cliff and got. It was just, after having been shot at, people tried to assassinate her. She was a big man in a bunch of countries where you shouldn't be. Yeah, doing the job that's in front of you can take you some tough places. It's interesting. Usually there's like 3 jobs in front of you, and you can choose which one, whether it's the one where you get assassinated or the one where you don't. I tend to go with the not assassinated. But there are people who are braver than me and a lot of work for that.